Rainbow Magic. Chloe the Topaz Fairy. By Daisy Meadows. Goblins in Disguise. There's a fancy dress shop, Kirsty Tate said, pointing at one of the shops on Cherrywell's busy high street. Brilliant, Rachel Walker replied happily. Let's go and choose costumes for Isabel's Halloween party before the bus arrives. Okay, Kirsty agreed. She was staying at Rachel's house for half-term week and the girls had just been bowling with some of Rachel's friends from school. One of them, Isabel, had invited everyone to a Halloween party at the weekend. What do you want to dress up as? Kirsty asked Rachel. Something magical, of course. Rachel replied with a grin. Kirsty smiled back. She and Rachel loved magic. It was because they shared an amazing secret. They were friends with the fairies. Their magical adventures had started one summer when the girls had helped the fairies stop Jack Frost from taking the color away from Fairyland. Since then, the Fairy King and Queen had asked for their help several times. In fact, that very week, Rachel and Kirsty were right in the middle of another fairy adventure, because Jack Frost was causing trouble again. This time he'd stolen 7 sparkling jewels from Queen Titania's tiara. The jewels were very precious because they controlled special fairy powers, like the fairy's ability to fly, or to give children in the human world sweet dreams. Every year, in a special celebration, the fairies would recharge their wands with the jewels' magic. This year's ceremony was due to take place in just a few days' time. If the gems weren't found by then, the fairies would run out of the jewels' special magic completely. Jack Frost had hoped to keep the magic jewels himself. But when their magical light had started to melt his ice castle, he had flown into a rage and cast a spell to hurl the gems into the human world. Then he sent his mean goblin servants to guard them so that the fairies couldn't get them back. Rachel and Kirsty had already helped 3 of the jewel fairies recover their magic gems, but there were still 4 jewels left to find. Do you think we'll find another jewel today? Rachel whispered as she and Kirsty ran up to the shop. I hope so, Kirsty replied. A small boy and his mom were looking at the display in the window of the fancy dress shop. There were bright orange Halloween banners, pumpkin lanterns and 2 shop dummies wearing children's Halloween costumes, one dressed as a witch and one as a goblin. Suddenly the boy gasped. Mom! Did you see that? He cried. The model in that goblin costume moved. Rachel and Kirsty stopped and stared at each other. Don't be silly, Tom, the boy's mom laughed, leading him away. Come along. A goblin model that moved? Kirsty hissed to Rachel. We'd better have a look. They peered closely at the window display. The dummy the boy had pointed out was wearing a green goblin costume and a little red pointed hat. But Rachel's eyes widened as she took in the goblin's beady eyes, long nose and great big feet. That's not a goblin costume, she exclaimed. It's a real goblin in a tunic and a hat. And look at the witch, Kirsty added. The witch model sported a long black skirt, a pointed hat and a broomstick, but its lumpy green nose and warty chin looked distinctly goblin-like to her. The witch is a goblin, too. Rachel gasped. A thought hit Kirsty and she clutched at Rachel's arm in excitement. Oh, Rachel, if there are goblins in the window, maybe one of the fairies' magic jewels is inside the shop. Looking out for magic. Come on. Let's go and see. Rachel urged. Pushing the door open, the girls hurried down 3 stone steps into the shop. An assistant came bustling to meet them. She had curly brown hair and a cheerful face. "Hello," she said, stepping around a large pile of pumpkin lanterns near the door. "Can I help you?" Rachel could feel her heart pounding. She began uncertainly. It was hard to concentrate knowing that there were two goblins standing just a few feet away. "Could we look at some costumes, please?" Kirsty put in quickly. "We're going to a Halloween party at the weekend and we haven't got anything to wear." The shop assistant smiled. "Well, you've come to the right place. My name's Maggie and I'm sure I can sort you both out with something. What did you have in mind?" "I think I'd..." Kirsty looked around and saw a display of cat costumes. "I think I'd like to try a cat costume, please," she decided. "Well, we have lots of those in for Halloween," replied Maggie. "How about you, my dear?" she asked Rachel. Rachel thought fast. They needed to search the shop for the jewel. If Kirsty could keep Maggie busy, then maybe she could look around. "I haven't quite decided yet," she replied truthfully. "Would it be all right if I just have a look first?" "Of course," Maggie answered. "You go ahead." She smiled at Kirsty. "Now, why don't you come to the changing rooms with me and I'll find a cat costume in your size." As Kirsty headed off with Maggie, Rachel glanced round the shop. There were rails of costumes and shelves piled high with wigs, makeup and masks. Rachel noticed a container full of plastic swords and a stand hung with fairy-like wings and wands. If there is a magic jewel in this shop, she thought, it could be anywhere. Her eyes fell on a pirate display near the back of the shop. There were two dummies dressed in pirate costumes, each with an eye patch, standing on a desert island. Between the pirates stood a palm tree and a huge treasure chest, with gold chains and strings of pearls spilling from it. That would be the perfect place for a jewel to hide, Rachel thought, hurrying over to the treasure chest. As she drew closer, her heart seemed to skip a beat. The chest was glowing with a deep golden light. "Magic!" Rachel thought, looking at the way the metal chains glittered and gleamed in the light. "It has to be." Holding her breath, she lifted the heavy lid of the chest. Suddenly, a fountain of orange and gold sparkles shot into the air. Rachel gasped and nearly dropped the lid, for twirling in the middle of the sparkles was a tiny fairy dressed in beautiful, fiery colors. Costumes galore! "Hello!" cried the fairy brightly. She was wearing a yellow skirt with 3 frills at the bottom, an orange wraparound top and tiny sparkling orange shoes. Her long, black, wavy hair was held back by a red hairband. "Hi!" Rachel replied in delight. She thought she recognized the fairy. "You're Chloe the Topaz fairy, aren't you?" Chloe nodded. "That's right." Rachel glanced over her shoulder. Luckily, Maggie was too busy handing clothes to Kirsty to have noticed anything. Rachel led Chloe behind a costume rail. "Is your Topaz in this shop?" she asked. "Kirsty and I thought there might be a magic jewel in here." "The magic Topaz is definitely in here." "I can feel it," Chloe responded, perching on Rachel's hand. "But I haven't been able to find it. I was searching the treasure chest when the lid fell shut, and I was trapped inside." "Thanks for rescuing me." "That's okay," Rachel declared with a smile. She peeped around the side of the rail. Have you seen the goblins? Chloe looked alarmed. Goblins? What goblins? There are two in the window pretending to be shop dummies, Rachel explained. Chloe shivered. They must be here to guard the Topaz. We'll have to try and send it back to Fairyland without them noticing. Yes, Rachel agreed. But we need to find it first. Where shall we start looking? Just then she heard the changing room curtains being pulled back. She peered round the clothes rail to see how her friend was getting on. That cat costume fits you just fine, Maggie was saying to Kirsty. But you need some ears. Just wait there while I get you some from the stockroom. As Maggie moved away, Rachel hurried over. Kirsty, she hissed. What is it? Kirsty asked eagerly. Have you found something? Oh, she gasped, as she saw Chloe fluttering beside Rachel. The little fairy grinned. Hi, I'm Chloe, she said. Chloe's Topaz is somewhere in here, Rachel told Kirsty quietly. We've got to find it. What does it look like? Kirsty asked. It's a deep golden color, Chloe replied. And it controls changing magic, so keep your eyes open for any strange changes. It might be hidden among those fairy wands, Rachel suggested, pointing to a display near the till. Let's check there. You do that while I check the queen costume, Kirsty said, pointing to an outfit near the window. It was a beautiful, jeweled dress and cloak, with a crown set with more glittering gems. The Topaz could easily hide there. Rachel's sharp ears caught the sound of footsteps. Maggie's coming back, she warned, and she and Chloe slipped behind the costume rail again. Let's check the fairy display, Rachel whispered to Chloe. If you hide in the pocket of my coat, Maggie won't see you. Chloe dived into Rachel's pocket and they headed over to the magic wands. Meanwhile, Maggie was handing the cat